Here we are, into game number 1 of a fresh series. In the top left has the red, nope, that's blue. The blue Zerg is sort of. There's not even any red on this map. How would I say that? In the bottom right has the pink Protoss. It is Goblin. We just witnessed take it to the ace match against Xancer, but eventually get denied on Interloper that victory. He did, I think, mention in the chat, like, oh god, why did I get the all Zerg group? One benefit, you practice only against Zerg. Non-benefit, what if you suck against Zerg? Like, what if that's your worst matchup? Well, then you're just screwed, you know? You better get good quick, son. Now, SortOf sent out a very early drone, and I was curious about that, especially because of the pathway it took. So it was going to be a proxy hatch, which SortOf is generally not very well known for. He's just not, you know, known for being cheesy. Certainly in ZvZ, everyone has to do an early pool every now and again, but that's excusable because of the mashup. And this is not just like cheese like Ling All In, this is something that's really weird. So Goblin is going to scout with his probe, which is important. He's going to see the lack of a hatchery, then check this, and then realize, oh god. And we'll see how his defense is against that. Because it's not just scouting and knowing it's on the way, it's also being able to defend it and knowing how to. His build is typical of most Protoss players. Gateway, Nexus, 7x core. There's not much else you can do about that unless you scout really, really early. Now, the probe here went into the main base, saw what is a typically timed spawning pool, because technically this was a hatch first. And I was worried he wasn't going to scout for this, but he does. Pretty key to get the pylon down and a photon overcharge ready to go. Zealot can also start chipping away at any building spine crawlers or help distract the queen, so that she can't take on the Mothership Core when that pops. There are definitely, I think, well, I don't know if there's tutorials out there, but there's a definite way to deal with this that I think can be mimicked by most people. And the first way, the beginning of it is not letting it snowball. Not just like seeing it and then going back home and walling off, which I think is a lot of people's initial reaction when this was first created. They went, oh my god, and they tried to be like a Robo or a Stargate. When really the best bet is to get aggressive if you scout it fast enough anyways. There's that photon overcharge. You stop the momentum, stop the snowball effect from happening as soon as possible. If you can't get the hatchery, so be it, but if you can get the queen, that helps. And if you can't get the hatchery, well, then that could just be game. I think Goblin, by dealing with this, if he really deals with it, and still time will tell, has shown us that his first Zerg cheese is pretty good. And perhaps SortOf should just take it to a macro game. But not really give up on it yet. The hatchery still lives, larva still being produced. Pylon will go down before the photon overcharge, I believe. It's slow with only one roach working at it, but it's happening. Warp gate is being chronoed out. Very important to get that out as soon as possible, not just for increased production of the gateways, but also just to make sure they can't possibly snipe it. SortOf kind of being funny here, trying to get the Mothership Core to run into a corrosive bile. Chasing out the queen, very close, but there was a very, very important photon overcharge on it, so it needed to survive. 2 pylons, making sure that there's going to be production no matter what. Well, it's going to be production for longer. Shouldn't say no matter what, because eventually this pylon will go down and Goblin will need more. But because that chrono boost was on the warp the entire time, that's no longer, you know, going to be stalled or even hell canceled. But these gateways still are, and that's a big problem. Pylons are a little bit late, and he doesn't quite have enough units. Also, Goblin was pretty late to adding on a tech structure. I think he made a really big mistake in that. Really big mistake. You know, the Stargate should have already been done, I would say. Building an Oracle or a Void Ray. Or a Robo should have already been made building an Immortal. Like, either way. And that just might have been what killed Goblin. The late pylons and the late addition to production. And I say it that way because whether it's more gateways, a Robo, or Stargate, well, that's kind of the best options. Like, those 3 things, if it was any one of those things, he's still in an okay position. But everything combined together, just the lateness of it has, I think, lost Goblin the game. Despite what was a very strong opener that really significantly delayed SortOf's attack on his front. So, looks like Goblin does not have the perfect defense against every single Zerg cheese, and that's it, GG. Sort of takes game number 1 with Proxy Hatch. Green Village, which we always go to, continues to be an amazing experience where they give us free stuff and the food is good quality. But the second day I went to a different place. And guys, actually, I've rarely had bad Korean food, but I got 2 dishes because the first one was so bad, the second one was so bad. I just ate a bowl of rice. I didn't even eat anything else but a bowl of rice. That's a bad experience. So I'm excited for something good. But food aside, because I don't want to make myself hungry, we are into game number 2 on Odyssey. In the top left, as the pink Protoss, he is Goblin. The bottom right, as the red Zerg, it's sort of. Up 1. Sending a drone out to what looks to be his own gold base, so sort of not wanting to deal with Protoss play like you usually have to. This is not an aggressive gold base take, and this is not an aggressive proxy hatch, but it usually does go into aggression, I would say. Doesn't have to. That's like a 60-40 type thing. Although now I'm thinking about it, maybe it's flipped. Maybe it usually goes into macro games lately. Either way, it can go into aggression or it can go into a macro game where he just continues expanding just, you know, this and then there. And that would be fine too, but the point is something a little bit different. So it's not just 3 hatch versus Stargate opener into oracles versus hydras. Not the usual pacing we'll see anyways. Goblin is going to come in here, probably panic as he sees no hatchery, the natural. Might even check his own gold base and around his 3rd bases, and then realize like, oh, okay, he's taking his own gold. I think he'd usually check his opponent's gold first, if it wasn't for the fact he just got proxy hatched and died to it. So we see a probe on this side of the map checking around. This one's going to bop to the natural, then to the 3rd, then to the 4th. Realize what's up. Thank you, Jim Sock, for the 100 bits. Zombie grub over man grub. I don't believe anyone's ever called Rifkin man grub, and that's kind of weird. You should stop doing that. Probe sees the hatchery, but important that a follow-up does happen here, a follow-up scout. He can try and get aggressive on it, you know, and you have to do it with a pylon. There's not much else you can do. If you go for a Stargate, that's harassment. That's not real, like, you know, I'm going to kill this. If you go for a Twilight Council, it's going to take too long. Same with a Robo. So a pylon rush, reactive rush, is going to be how it has to happen. But putting it where he did, the Ling's on top of it, he can come back later with the Mothership Core and then put him on the low ground. But sort of already being prepared for this, seems to be doing fine. Goblin doesn't go for a Stargate, goes for a Twilight Council. Sometimes the best thing to do against someone who goes for a gold base is to just try and match the macro game anyways. Just be extremely wary that their attacks will be even more powerful than usual. And then sometimes aggression works out. But this aggression is going to take a little while. Sort of has a lot of time to get to an even a 3rd base. He's gone for an Evolution Chamber and a handful of Lings. Everyone's the main. Of course, not many drones here because they've been transferred. Resident Glaives. Oh, that's not Resident Glaives. There you go, Resident Glaives. With a Warp Prism. Could be a decent attack. Certainly one problem with taking the gold base is that you don't have creep spread, so Queen's usually a very useful defensive tool, can't help, but sort of has been making Lings for the past minute and a half, 2 minutes, and finally is sending them over. Goblin realizing at the last second this is going to be an all-in, tries to build a wall. Adept pops out, but on the wrong side, not really producing a wall, and more Lings just collide in here. We do have a drop Overlord ready to go already, and that is it. Did not take very long at all. GG. Even if he had gone for a Stargate, which would have produced an Oracle to help out, the fact that he couldn't get a wall up for very long was bad, simply put. So a quick 2-0 from SortOf to start off this series. Could be the last game coming up here, but Goblin did bring it back to the ace match against Zancer, so maybe he can do it again versus SortOf. Quick 2-minute break before we get into it. Welcome back. We are into game number 3, potentially the last one. In the bottom right, already up 2-0. It's SortOf. In top left is the pink Protoss. He is Goblin. Had a decent shot against the first cheese, which is a proxy hatchery, but then unfortunately did not have much of a shot against the second cheese, the Ling Flood off of the gold base. Didn't see it coming. I would say even arguably didn't have a great build against it, considering he would have to have waited for Resident Glaze to finish to really, you know, utilize it. And that was still like a minute off. And couldn't get a wall up in time. Because sometimes they reveal the links to a probe, or they attack a gateway first and you do the quick like, oh shit, build a wall, and you're just barely there. And that's what he tried and failed to do. So he knew it was going to be over, the momentum was going to be too strong, and just tapped out. A smart move, but, you know, still a game-ending one. Doesn't feel great. It sort of seems that, you know, with 2 games going cheesy like that, that he just doesn't want to take on Goblin late game, or mid game even, which is fine. I don't think necessarily that it's a fear, you know, like, oh god, Goblin's such a great Oracle player, he's gonna defeat me. It's just like watching Xanser have to take him down in such a painful way, actually going to the ace match, when probably, in a lot of people's eyes, should have gotten the 4th game as a victory. You got to be wary. You know, the power of letting a Protoss get away with too much, especially on specific maps, can get anyone. But not to, I guess, say that Goblin is just some guy that can only win when his opponents underestimate the race he plays. Certainly, I think he won't, you know, be too shy about saying, like, this is a tough group, you know, my opponents are more well-known than me. I think he realizes that this was going to be tough for him, but Goblin is a guy that we've enjoyed watching develop as initially just a cheesy Oracle player into solid macro, solid micro, solid plans. And he was initially, you know, he defeated Xanser's cheese and he dealt with a proxy hatchery initially well, so, like, he's shown how good of a player he can be, but he's missing it on certain marks. And that's why he found himself in the loser's match, and this is why he finds himself down 2-0. SortOf goes for a 3rd base, but I'm still not ready to call it a macro game for him quite yet. He has been going for, I think, fast speed lately. We see, I think, more Zergs. Add that in. Certainly, and this is kind of a funny thing, I guess, to elaborate on. You know, we see the Koreans go for the Overlord speed, and a lot of other people follow suit, and that makes sense. It happens with anything. But for a lot of things, units, styles, compositions, right? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, pro gamers aren't always all in agreement. So you have a lot of people say that Overlord speed is garbage and you should never need it, and you have a lot of other people saying, well, there's a reason that X or Y person always gets it, and you should too. So, as good as I've always thought Overlord speed is, for multiple reasons, there's been a long time where it wasn't produced, and there are still a lot of Zergs that don't want to get it. It sort of does, and now has perfect scouting. And by the way, just because I think that it's a great thing to get doesn't mean that it is the best way to go. Obviously, Xanser was able to scout out that charge all in without Overlord speed. He just had 2 Overlords in good placement. But I just always, I feel like when I first got into StarCraft, I'd hear, like, well, pro gamers say, and it'd be like, well, every pro gamer says it, well, they know they're best, but when you actually talk to them or watch their Twitter interactions, there's, like, so much discussion and arguments about what is better. More so than just, like, my race is worse than yours. I mean, actual, like, Terrans talking about how good 1-1-1 openers are or something like that. Anyways, more important for sure is that it is going to be a Twilight Council opener, so Resident Glaives is done, War Prism is on the way. SortOf, though, knowing all of this, is going to pair with Lings and Banelings. It's another thing that's kind of along what I was talking about with the pro gamer discussion. I see some Zergs open up with roaches against a lot of these early aggression moves, whether it's charge, adepts, the Archon drop, whatever else the pros can throw it, I guess, and go for roaches. Roaches just feel like they're a terrible unit right now, to be honest. Only used in the rare, you know, games where you can get a surprise. Ling Baneling, you get it. You get the nice shot with Banelings, instant KO on the aggression, and it's a unit that you're going to want to invest into and get anyways as you go on because it's Ling Baneling Hydra lately, not Roach Ravager like it was 2 years ago. So that was a very elaborate way of saying I like that sort of defending with Lings and Banelings. It's also only going to be so many adepts, and there's no, you know, 8 gateways behind this, and the third base was scouted. So, what's more important to scout is double follow-up of Stargates, which is expected and is scouted. Sort of with the Overlord just running through. Should have no problem getting scouts on anything, if he really wants to. If he really wants it, he's going to get it. War Prism, oh my god, is hardcore denied. Dear Lord. SortOf even got a spine crawler where sometimes sentries are warped in. But even if it wasn't a sentry warp in, the fact that adepts would drop on that is huge. This was a great defense by SortOf. Very clever placement. You guys should do this in your play if you play Zerg. I also love that his lings and banelings were on the ramp so that he could very quickly decide where to go rather than getting caught, perhaps, out of position. And the adepts are even found in the top. I don't think Goblin was thinking that was going to happen. He was hoping they could just chill there and come back later. So not great start for Goblin. Going into Oracles first, and the remaining adepts do come in to try and get some drone kills, but they aren't going to get very many at all. Oracle's tip-tapping away, though, without that Spore Crawler. Managed to get 10 drones. That's not bad. When Oracle does die, but considering that Goblin also wasted a lot of adepts doing this, it's like, was that really worth it? SortOf, though, made a ton of lings and banelings and not a lot of drones. So this is a real different, it's a contrast to what Xanster had done, which is get up to 77 drones in a 4th base as soon as possible. But with the lings and banelings, he goes in, crashing to 3rd base of Goblin, who had stopped producing oracles. Doesn't have a lot to defend here with, because he had gone into carriers too quickly. If he had been producing nothing but oracles, there are 3 oracles with energy probably waiting for this to happen. And he deals with it, you know, might have lost the probes, but he deals with it. Because the carriers take so long to build, the oracles had already popped energy on the other side of the map, and all the adepts had died, the nexus goes down and 9 probes lose their lives. Goblin was banking a lot of money though, so he instantly slaps that down, and maybe, if he could, he'd even double expand, but this is blocking that out. And it'd be a little bit too dangerous to do, knowing that your army just is non-existent. You're still waiting on your carriers to pop out. His army is 1 Stalker, 1 Oracle, and a Void Ray. And a Mothership Core, technically. SortOf, nice move there. If that had not been able to kill the Nexus, then maybe his lack of droning would have been hurtful. But he's back. He's up to 77 drones. He just cut his opponent's economy really, really badly. And is now pumping out Hydras, upgrades, Corruptors, and an Infestation Pit all around the same time. So that was certainly a bad... Well, this is a bad spot for Goblin. And that was certainly a problem of how he follows up. Again, Oracles would have been there. Oracles produce fairly quickly, but carriers definitely do not. But he instantly replaced the Nexus, and the carriers aren't being taken care of immediately. Even some adepts get in here, get a couple of drones. War Prism dies finally. Yeah, his carriers aren't being taken care of immediately. And he just got some decent scouting with those loss of units, so he knows his Corruptors, and he knows that, of course, there's Hydras. Even though he knows it, can he really deal with it? No, but at least he realizes that a Spire is in play, whereas, you know, versus Xanster, he kind of got away with carriers because there was no tech swap. It was just a committal of the same unit over and over again, and that eventually got Xanster to lose that 4th game. Not so in this. SortOf can choose his fights wisely, can change his tech in the blink of an eye, and is constricting Goblin to 3 bases. Now he's trying to get in here, bust open the doors, let the Lings run in, but a bunch of Photon Overcharges deny that. He's got Corruptors over here, not just looking for Corruptor or carriers to pick off, or even perhaps, if the carrier is really out of position, going for the Nexus with your little P ability. Go for the Void Ray, snipe that, but a couple of them lose their lives, more than a couple. Some nice target fire coming out from Goblin, not just letting the Interceptors do whatever, and actually almost all the Corruptors go down. They don't quite have their Carapace upgrades yet. +1 flyer attack was the first one, which I feel like as time goes on, we'll see more and more Carapace firsts, but eventually he's going to get double Spire, so that was just poor timing. Of course, Carapace, just great. Corruptors already have natural armor of 2, I think. But this game is going on. If Goblin can get a 4th base and secure that, sort of could find himself facing a very scary late-game Protoss army. Attacks to the right side ultimately fail. Attacks to the left still can't quite get anything. But targeting down the Timer X core would be a good move. I kind of hope SortOf realizes that too and goes for it. A nice contaminate on already slow-building carriers. And Corruptors come back with a vengeance to pee on that Nexus and stall it out a little bit. That was a pretty clutch cancel. Corruptor attacks really speed up, and you don't even realize that was only 100 minerals lost. Once again, the left side's being attacked. Still a little sad he's not going for the upgrade. Now his Hydra's been taken out by just only a couple of interceptors, but Lings do make it to the main base. This is going to complicate things. That's where all the probes are moved to, and there's nothing to really defend. Only a couple of warp is available. The army was trying to protect the growing 4th base and really does not want to come back home. 9 probes go down. A couple more Lings, gonna get a couple more before all is said and done. Sees that there's a Templar Archives. So beware of Archons and Storms, but even a couple of probes bypass the cannons, get into that 3rd base, and suddenly 12 probes becomes 28. Still, these ones getting too many probes. Just too many. Goblin, meanwhile, tried to use his Adepts to counter, just got 4. So he's on 5 bases, 78 drones. I don't think he cares about 4 drones. He's also continuing his upgrades on his air, so his Corruptors are going to be coming in mass. He saw the Templar Archives, but the Archons really are not plentiful enough. And this many Corruptors can definitely snipe carriers. Even a Parasitic Bomb coming down. And that's it, GG. Goblin realizes his time is up, especially after losing 36 probes. And he taps out, so that is a quick and easy 3-0 from SortOf. Goblin was able to complicate matters with his answer, but not so with our other European Zerg. And he will continue to live on. SortOf's going to go to the Cider match. Goblin, we have to say goodbye to. The next series is going to be Xanster versus Denver, which is a ZvZ. You saw Denver take out SortOf 3-0, and that was a very strong performance by him. What can he do against Xanster, who is also a strong Zerg? I don't know if his ZvZ is any better than SortOf's, but I guess that's what we're going to find out. They're going to get the vetoes done. Give me the map order, and we will come back after this quick break. I'm going to show you some information about TING, again, a U.S. mobile phone service company, only for the U.S. So everyone else, you can kind of tune out unless you enjoy the ads. And some of them are funny. I think they're well done anyways. I myself use TING, if that matters at all. I can just vouch for the credibility and being awesome people to work with as a customer. So check it out, bttv.ting.com if you're interested. See you with the winners match coming up.